Journey to Resettlement, Refugee Experiences in Countries of Asylum. My name is Jackie, and I'm the Program Coordinator for BRYCS, and I have just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First off, if you need help troubleshooting during this presentation, please email us at info@brycs.org, and our program associate will try her best to give you a hand. We will also be recording and archiving this webinar, and all participants will receive a follow-up email with a short evaluation, a copy of the slides, and the recording. A copy of the slides can also be found in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen if you'd like to download them now and take notes. As a courtesy, we have muted all the phone lines, so all of the participants are in listen-only mode. So during the Q&A session at the end of today's event, please use the chat box on the right to submit your questions or comments. And with that, I will turn it over to Jenny, who will get us started.
Thank you, Jackie, for that introduction. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in here to the objectives of today's presentation. Really, most generally, we want to gain a general awareness of the refugee experience, and we're going to do that today by hearing from two former refugees. If you encounter refugee families and children in your community, you may wonder what their lives were like just prior to arriving in the United States. What is it like to go to school in a refugee camp? How do urban refugees find work or medical care? What does the typical daily routine look like? Refugee resettlement is often a long process and is a unique experience of hardship, triumph, and hope. Those of us working with refugees in our communities may not always have a full picture of their life experiences. We often hear a glimpse of the story of flight from their country of origin and then focus on their resettlement experience in the United States. However, many refugees have spent months and years in a refugee camp or in an urban setting, navigating systems of education and work and medical care and a new language in anticipation for a more durable solution. So today we have the opportunity to learn about these experiences from two former refugees, Paw and Suhad, as they give us a glimpse into their stories of migration. So I just want to start by thanking you all for joining us today for this exciting presentation. And before we get into things, I just want to briefly introduce to you who you'll be hearing on the other end today for the presentation. So first we have Tena Gebrasadiq. He is the lead Children's Services Specialist with Migration and Refugee Services at USCCB. We have myself, Jenny Siegel, former Refugee Child Protection Coordinator with USCCB, though just recently made the switch to academia and am now pursuing my PhD focusing on child migration issues. And then our two guest speakers for today are Paw Ku, who is a youth case manager with Heartland Alliance and is a refugee from Burma. And then we also have Suhad Khudhair, who is a housing coordinator with the Catholic Community Services of Utah, and she's a refugee from Iraq. So thank you all for being here today, and we're excited to get started.
All right. Thank you very much, Jackie, and also Jenny, for the introduction. My name is Tena Gebrasadiq. We'll be presenting on some of the refugee background with regard to the statistics and also the URM program, what we have been doing here in USCCB. So as you see from the slide, we have about 65.6 million people displaced all over the world. This number, as you can imagine, is the highest number since World War II. And we have also about 22.5 million refugees. These are people who are registered with UNHCR, either UNHCR or specifically with Palestinians. They are registered with UN Agency for Relief and Works. So we have about 22.5 million refugees worldwide. We have also about 10 million people who are stateless. As you know, these people are either born stateless or they became stateless. So we have this many people who don't belong to any one of the country. We have also about 189,300 refugees resettled in the year 2016. So this just happened last fiscal year in 2016. So a refugee, as you all know, has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And the sad thing is over half of the refugees are under the age of 18, which brings to our program that is a URM unaccompanied refugee minors program. Next is to just indicate the worldwide distribution of refugees in different parts. As you can see from the map here, there are about 6 top countries who are hosting these refugees, so many refugees who are registered with UNHCR. The first one is Turkey, the second one is Pakistan, the third one is Lebanon, Iran, Uganda, and Ethiopia. As you know, in the Middle East, Turkey and Lebanon are hosting very big number of Syrian refugees. And when we come to Uganda and Ethiopia, you can probably know Southern Sudanese refugees who are fleeing the civil war in their country. So these two countries in Africa are hosting the very big number of refugees from these South Sudanese. So where do we think that these refugees live? We probably all assume that all these refugees live in rural camps, but it is not always true that all refugees live in refugee camps. So this is a video, a very short video by International Rescue Committee to show that people also, most refugees also live in urban setting in search of jobs and a better life. So let's have this very short presentation of refugees who live in urban setting.
Thank you, Tena. And just a side note, unfortunately, you'll only be able to hear this video if you are listening over your computer speakers. So we do apologize for that technical limitation, but again, we are recording and archiving this presentation.
The common image of a refugee home is a white tent in a dusty field in the middle of nowhere. But did you know that 60% of refugees worldwide are now living in towns and cities? The reality is that the majority of people forced from their homes are now seeking safety in urban areas, where they have a better chance to find work and to rebuild a dignified life without relying on handouts. Between 1.5 and 3 million people are moving into cities every week. Displacement is often long-term, with more than 80% of refugees now being displaced for 10 or more years. The problem is that once they arrive, they're often viewed as a burden on the local population, despite evidence that they can actually contribute to a city's local economic well-being. This negative perception means that refugees are often discriminated against, both legally and socially, forcing them into hiding where they are unable to access the opportunities that brought them to the city in the first place. At the IRC, we're adapting to this reality by seeking new and innovative ways to support the displaced and their host communities to help both survive, recover, and rebuild their lives.
All right. So when faced with displacement of people across borders in a refugee crisis, the ultimate goal is to find a lasting, sustainable solution for refugees where they can pursue a life of dignity with basic human rights and access to public life that's safe. And it is UNHCR's mandate to pursue what we call durable solutions for refugees. And we can see the three durable solutions are voluntary repatriation, local integration, and resettlement. And voluntary repatriation is often the most desired result and is when refugees are able to safely return to their homes. These efforts are often coordinated very closely between governments to ensure protection of people who are repatriating. And it also must be a choice for the person who's going back home. Examples of where we've seen voluntary repatriation in the past on a large-scale level have been with the Angolans in Africa when they were able to repatriate. This did not take place for many years, however, and was an option that became available after many years of being in a country of asylum. We also saw this with Nicaraguans, and we saw it with some Burmese. Another durable solution is that of integration. This is for refugees when they're able. Oh, sorry, I got a little mixed up here. Integration. This is for refugees who are not able to return home, and they're given the option to integrate within their host communities. This is often very complex and is an effort that gives refugees the opportunity to enjoy permanency through legal residency and access to economic, civic, and public life in their countries of asylum. Sometimes there can be many barriers to this, which include a government will, or maybe the option of repatriation seems like it could come soon, or maybe there's discrimination. But when this does happen, it can be a good and safe and permanent solution for many refugees. And then finally, the durable solution we hear so much about is that of resettlement. And this is generally reserved for some of the most vulnerable refugees worldwide and is an opportunity for refugees to enjoy permanency and access to economic, civic, and legal residency in a third country. So examples of countries who resettle would be like the U.S., who's a major resettler of refugees, and many other European countries, Australia, and some countries in South America. So as I mentioned, the U.S. is a major participant in the resettlement program. In the federal fiscal year 2016, there were various resettlement organizations and over 90 dioceses that resettled almost 85,000 refugees. With the new administration, we have seen that in fiscal year 2017, this number was much lower, and we expect to see that same thing in 2018. Now, not all states participate in resettling refugees, but of those that do, we see states like California, Texas, New York, Michigan, and Ohio resettle some of the most. Of course, there are many other states that welcome refugees in great and small numbers alike. And refugees from all over the world resettle in the U.S. We have refugees coming from protracted refugee situations where they've been in a camp or in a refugee situation for a very long time. With many of those resettling in the U.S., like those coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo or Somalia. We also have many refugees from Southeast Asia, from Burma and Bhutan. More recently, we've been hearing quite a bit about the Rohingya. And then we have refugees resettling in the United States from the Middle East, like Syria or Afghanistan.
So I will speak again on Office of Refugee Resettlements and Accompanied Refugee Minors Program. There are two agencies, lead voluntary agencies, who are working on this program. One is us, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Migration and Refugee Services, and the second one is Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, to lead voluntary agencies engaged in the URM program here in the U.S. The program serves refugee minors identified by the State Department overseas, as well as certain minors who become eligible after arriving to the United States, who do not have a parent or relative available to provide care for them. So this might be refugees coming directly from overseas, or Cuban and Haitian immigrants who are already here, asylees, victims of trafficking, certain minors who have special immigrant juvenile status, and also U visa holders. So these are categories of unaccompanied children who can be served by this program. Since 1980, almost about 13,000 minors have entered the URM program, and at its peak in 1985, ORR provided protection to about 3,828 children in care. Now, in various states, ORR has about 1,300 children in care. So when we come to placement, while most children are placed in licensed foster homes, other licensed care settings are also utilized according to children's individual needs, such as therapeutic foster care, group homes, residential treatment centers, and independent living programs. So these are the different living arrangements for minors based on their need. The goal of reunification whenever possible. So if there is a reunification option, we always take that as a priority, and when there are no reunification options, of course, they will go for other legal relief. In the program, indirect financial support, case management, educational support, English language acculturation, recreational activities, and etc. are provided to these minors who enter into this program. The major goal, as you can see, is of helping youth to develop appropriate skills to enter adulthood and to achieve social self-sufficiency. So this is the major objective or goal of the program. So USCCB's work with refugee children. These are unaccompanied refugee minors. This has been started. The operation started in the mid-1970s. It is a unique model combining both child welfare and refugee protection practices. So especially based on the best interest determination that has come with the refugee documents. So it combines both a child welfare practice and also refugee protection practices. USCCB has about 12 affiliate programs around the United States that provide foster care to these unaccompanied children who enter into this program. And if there are people who are interested to become a foster parent, they can always visit usccb.org/foster care to learn more about the program and how to become a foster care parent.
USCCB, along with all the other resettlement agencies, also works with attached refugee minors. These are children that are separated from their biological parents at some point or in all stages of the resettlement process. And because of this, they are seen as more vulnerable and therefore require additional services. Some of them are living with relatives or in informal foster arrangements because their parents are maybe missing or their parents may be known to be dead. Others are overseas without their parents, and they're coming to join them in the United States. And then there's another classification of attached refugee minors that are children who are married to adults. These are often referred to as M7s, or married minors. And because of the vulnerable status of these children who are separated from their parents, or maybe coming to reunify with their parents, and they're navigating some of the challenges that come with family reunification, they are provided with additional services throughout the 90-day period. And oftentimes, their resettlement in the U.S. is determined by U.S. ties. It can also be determined by the strength of a resettlement agency or resettlement affiliate in being able to serve the specific needs of the attached refugee minor. And now, without further ado, we will move into the portion of this presentation where we'll be able to hear from two refugees, Paw and Suhad. We're going to start with Paw, who's going to walk through and just give us a general sense for what it's like, or what it was like for her to be a refugee and living in an asylum country. So Paw, I will go ahead and let you take it from here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'll just be speaking on my personal, my experience back in the Thailand refugee camp. Wow, it was for 14 years. It was a long time back in there. It was a home because, like growing up there at a very young age, and my whole childhood was just knowing, just being in. It's like the camp was surrounded by like all the wires, like all the police officer are surrounded, and it's like a cage. You live with your own little family, and there are like a lot of other family there too, and life in there is challenge because there is not really freedom. You're stateless. You have no. You're not recognized by the Thai people, nor you have you do not have citizenship of anywhere, and you have nowhere to go besides just stay in the camp. So resources are very limited, and then after time is overcrowded, and that when it's overcrowded, there's a lot of health issue, and people are facing, because there are not a lot of medical. There's only like one hospital for the whole, small hospital for the whole zone. So there are like different zones in the Mela camp. So in Thailand there are like seven different refugee camps, and I live in one of the most largest camp, which is called Mela camp. It's almost like 1 million refugees who live in there from different minority group from Burma or Myanmar. And as you can see, like all those houses, some people live near the mountains, some people live near the the river, small river in there is very crowded, and like especially during the summer where it's like super hot, because the house, if you can see, they're built with like bamboo and leaf, and if one house is catch fire, then you are probably likely to lose your whole house, and after time there's not much income. We, as a refugee live there, receive like the UN to get monthly, maybe some rice. a little bit of rice and oil and beans, and sometimes we get donation, like clothing and stuff like that. But it was not a lot. But we use what we have in the camp, and we do have a small school that where we were taught by the local teacher. And also, if you let me know if I speak really fast, or if if I start mumbling, then somebody right in there. So in terms of housing and education and health and job opportunity and freedom and safety, it's not a lot because we were living in a host country, and there's not much opportunity for growth or for freedom or job opportunity, because if somebody get caught leaving the camp, then they will get taken and either be placed in Thai prisons and they do the work for time shoulder, or they be sent back to Burma, Myanmar, and they become a worker for Burmese military. So it was, you people oftentimes they risk their life to go work in a Thai farm, or to get like maybe $3 in the U.S. money, for the whole day working in a labor job. So oftentimes some family, usually the male, usually the father, want to take the risk, leaving the family in the camp and trying to go find a job outside of the camp, because there's not a lot of job within the camp except for do some cleaning job, or helping like in the gardens, or cleaning, or fixing stuff. There's a lot of opportunity. So oftentimes some parents get caught, in the process of like leaving the camp and going to find a job to support the family. And when that happens, family parents get separated for their from their children. Unfortunately, I was able to live in there with both my parents. Oftentimes there are a lot of children who do not have parents and need to live with other. There's a charity like to take care of the children. So as a young child, living in the camp, oftentimes we have to live in fears. And I remember we have to dig a hole like under our house, because there were a few times where the Burmese, like the military or the army, came actually to the camp, started like fire and shooting people. And then so in each zone we have it's like aldermen, so like adults who would give a signal that when somebody ring the bell, then you have to stay in your house and either hide under the ground and cover with stuff and have to be quiet. Or some people who live near the mountain, that they would just have to rocks, they just have to go hide it somewhere. So oftentimes we have to live in fears because of like anything can happen, especially like near to the end of the camp or outside like the border of the camp. So I remember like as a teenager living in the camp, it was very it was scary at some point, but then our life just carry normal, just going back to school and go to our school and then come back and help my mom with like go carry the water, and during the summer we had to line up to get water because it was dry. So either we dig a hole in the river and then get some water, but for drinking water we would have to line up with our big bottle and then carry into the line, and they would just wait for our turn to fill our water, because the water in the river were not clean for us to drink it. It was not drinkable, so we just only for do laundry and so there was like the daily life. And since there were back in when I lived there, there were no electricity and there were no like computer or microwave or any kind of technology. That was 14 years ago. When I lived in the camp. So people mostly I would just walk there, even in the rainy seasons or like hot season. And we just have to cook in the morning. Wake up very early and cook and eat, in the morning, and then come back and cook in the evening. So there's no way to put the food in the fridge. You eat like morning and then you pack for lunch and you come back and you cook. And oftentimes as a children, especially the adults, like the oldest children, would have to go find extra wood, to cook, because we use dry wood and like near the we live because near the forest there is like extra wood, so just gather all the wood and to cook it. And since we have no like resources to make it, the food has to be you actually have to cook it, And during the night, like we use candle. I remember, so when it was a rainy season and windy, the candle would just like being blown up, so we have to keep putting the candle. And so the experience, just being there, like heavy limited access to resources in terms of education, in terms of like housing, in terms of like health, and job opportunity, and freedom in general. I could even dream like what I would have become, or where would I be, or would I still be alive, or what would I do back then. It just, there were not much I couldn't dream big, because you're living in a camp, and there's not much to excel beside having the basic educations and living there. So it was very feeling very sophisticated. Like it was because of like limited choices, and also limited resources and freedom. So there's not much for room to grow. So people usually just children go to school and then come back and help parents, and then we would have to sleep early and turn on the light very early, because just for safety reasons. So there are like the whole zone need to, at 10 o'clock people need to be quiet and be in their house, and do not go out, because anything can happen. And because as a refugee, we will be discriminated. Like if the parents like want to travel outside the camp, then they would, when they get caught, like I said, when they get caught, then they will get in a big trouble, and there's like it's harder to get reconnected again. Within the camp, usually people like walk and they bike, but now I went back in the refugee camp 2 years ago, so there were a lot of changes. It was more crowded, and then it was not clean. Like the river were very, it has so much stuff that I can't even imagine back in like when I lived there. So I went back there and see, they have changed a lot. But as my experience when I was living there, with the food, usually rice would be included in everything. You eat rice with rice and beans, and using like we have like small area where we would grow some vegetables and fruit. Then we use it for as a way to to survive. So that because the food that we get are not enough, and some family are bigger than the other family. So it was family are finding a way to just be supportive to each other. And so there was like I know I'm going all over the places, but if you have questions later on, you can email or ask over there. Can we go to the next slide, or is there any more? Or okay, the education and economic opportunity. So in the camp, every zone has their own little school, because the camp is huge. So we have like zone A, zone B, zone Z. Each zone have like a lot of kids. It's super crowded, and the school are like your feet are on the ground every day, and teacher the teacher are very strict in a way, like you get punishment if you don't do your homework, and it was a way to teach us like the importance of education, and following the rules and the law that we live in there. And in terms of after people graduate from like the high school, then they become teacher, and they teach other younger kids. So it was like a rotation of teacher. And in terms of like economy, there's not a lot, like I said earlier. So we do have like nursery school, elementary school, and high school, but all the teachers are being taught by the local teacher. And we did learn like different subjects, like Burmese, Korean. There are Thai subjects, and then like a little bit of English and science and history. And some schools are like on top of the hill, and students are travel by themselves, even though they're very young. They go along and they just walk by themselves, even though it's like maybe 20-30 minutes. The parents, so there are not a lot of supervision. One of the things, in the camp, children are just being freely like just travel to school, and going, by themselves, like to school and to play outside, and parents just do, whatever they need to do, like with work or with cooking at home, taking care of stuff. So majority of the time, children are walking by themselves, and sometimes, like especially during the rainy season, it was more challenges because they were muddy all over the places. If you fall and you get dirty, then you have to come back to your house and change it, and then you're late, and then get in trouble. But it was part of the life, In terms of economic, like I said earlier, there are not a lot of economic opportunity within the camp. It's just limited resources. People have their own little stores selling basic food and vegetable and like clothing. So majority, like some women who might not be able to do other work, so they make their own like traditional clothes and then they sell it. And for men, do more like physical labor work, whether it's like help building or carry like heavy stuff to build and store, or so do more physical stuff. And teacher, of course, have to go through like at least some basic training before becoming a teacher. So in terms of that, that was like very limited for growth of economic because we were not able to go outside of the camp. And then in terms of medical care, as I've mentioned earlier, there were not a lot of many nurses and doctor because we were in the camp. So I guess we were not like the priority, and they're more care better. Like if you go into the city or if you go to more area that has like outside of the camp, then they do have better medicines in terms of like shot or everything. We do have like I remember we did have basic like health like medicines when you get sick, but majority of the time you cannot get fully scanned, or if you have like maybe, so if you have like serious disease, you cannot even know until like you really sick, too late, after time that happened, just because there are not enough technology or enough supplies or things to check people up regularly. So it was like when you're really sick, then you go to the doctor and then you get medicines. But of the time, it's too late scan or to find out what kind of issue you have. And of the time, family do not have enough money to even go to a doctor, or have to pay like a lot of money. And of the time, people just stay home and just use basic medicine that they can get it from the store, and it doesn't really solve the actual like disease or thing that people have. So they do have medical basic care, but very limited and expensive. Can we go to the next one, please? For the resettlement process, earlier, as people have mentioned, the process takes very long. Some people leave camp over 20 years. Well, for my family, we live over like 14 years. Until like the last 2 years, we have to apply for the process and go through the interview, the application process. So we have to fill the application and wait, and then we will go through interview, one-on-one interview with the whole family, and then we will go through like health checkup, and then they will also do a background check, for the family, and they will check for if anybody have like any kind of disease or any like medical issues or anything like that. And then I think for our family, we have to wait at least almost up to like a year and a half before we get the answer that, okay, you are good to go. So it did take, a while, the process, like step by step. People go through, background check and ask you around, and if you did anything, or, they went through like whole details, like more than just you fill up and you come. It was a long process, and some people have to go and wait longer. just because they did not have all the proper documents or prove that they were a refugee. So it was for us, it was take at least a year and a half. So after we pass all the stage, then if we decide to go, then we sign papers, and then after that we get on the bus, and then we come in through the airport and come to the U.S. In terms of like what state or where we would be resettled, we have no idea. We just say, okay, you're going to the United States, and then once we know we get here, then you are coming to Chicago, and then that's how we get to be in here, and I'm in Chicago since then.
All right, Paw, thank you so much for sharing your story and giving us so many details about what life was like for you and your family in the camp. Your story has generated a lot of questions in the chat box, and we're really excited to see those questions, but we are going to wait to address the questions until the end of the presentation. So for now, we are going to go ahead and introduce Suhad. So Suhad, we're excited to hear your story, which is a bit different and something you went through as an adult in a country of asylum, and also it was an urban refugee experience. So we'll hear Suhad's experience there. Suhad, are you on the other line? And Suhad, just as a reminder to unmute yourself, you'll need to press *6. Or I'm sorry, *1. All right. So it seems like Suhad is having some technical difficulties. So what we're going to do is give her just a couple of minutes. One of my colleagues is going to try to connect with her and get her back online. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead and do what I said we were not going to do, which is address some of these questions in the chat box, specifically for Paw. So Paw, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself
Okay.
in the meantime, and we'll go ahead and ask some of these questions for you. I actually have a question. I'm going to sort of steal the show right away and ask the first question. I'm just wondering, how did you feel when you were at the refugee camp? Like, what were your, what were your thoughts about the future? And like, were you thinking about resettlement? Were you thinking about going home? Like, what were you thinking during those years?
As like during my whole childhood, like when we go to school, we were taught about the history and about why we were, a refugee and why do we live here, even though like we learn about those things, and also back when we come back home, also, I did question at the beginning, like earlier, I remember my mom would really tell me the story so that I would never forget what happened and why did we leave our village and why did we live here, and so all that. So she would retell me those stories so like I never forget. Like she told me over many times. That's why like I always remember, like she said when you were like a very young kid, we live in the village, and then one day it was like telling a story, but then as I grow older, like I can connect and see what's really happening. It was devastating because many people, my mom just tell me the story when I was like every night, that the reason why we live here, because if we didn't leave our village, then we can get shot and die, die, while running and while try to take their stuff with them, because, the Burmese military came and attacked and burned out the whole village, and you either run or you stay behind and you fight and you die. So we didn't really have much choice, so my mom, just told me, and also through the class we learned about, the history and also the current situation that's happening in Myanmar and Burma, and there's not much option. And while living in the camp, I wasn't seeing what my future myself like could envision, or like what type of person I would become, and depending on like because of where we live, it's hard to dream big because of where we live, and because of like support, or we don't really have freedom, and like we couldn't even go outside of the camp, and just being afraid, as a children, like at certain time you have to sleep, you have to turn on the light, or something can happen at any time, or somebody might just come out to your house and do something, or so as my whole childhood, I think being just living there, just the feeling of darkness, kind of, and not knowing what to do in the future, or like where we'll go, until it was like maybe late 2007 or 2006 where we learned about our option of going to the U.S. or applying, get the opportunity to apply for coming over here. Then I was like, I told my mom, yeah, we should go, because we see in the TV that you can go to school and become whoever you want to become. So it was very, there was where I was like, oh, there you go, and we can have a better life, get a better education and do good for our future. So that's where I was like start thinking about my future. But before then, there's like kind of really think besides just survive, day by day, just get it day by day and week by week and year by year. Because we have no documentation, we were not granted for anything. Even though people who were born in the camp, they were not, a citizen of Thai, or they were not like recognized by anyone besides just having a document that you're a refugee. You cannot travel anywhere if you travel, and if you then you can be in trouble. So we have to fear, law, and because we live in the whole country, so we have to follow what they ask.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Paw. I can imagine that the transition from sort of living in survival mode to suddenly thinking about your future and dreaming was quite drastic. But I'm glad you were able to have that transition. I'm going to go to the chat box. There's a couple of questions here. Laurel asked a question about basically about repatriation, so being able to go back since the Burmese government has changed. I'm not necessarily asking you to get into the specific sort of politics of that, but if you could mention just a little bit about what your thoughts on repatriation were while you were in the camp, or what your family's thoughts were on that, and whether or not that was an option for you.
It was not an option. We were in fears. We knew, for many decades that the change, will not happen overnight, despite the change, like in the government and all that. It was, it was just like for medium purpose, and just on top of the surface, we know deep down it won't happen. Like it will take longer, and people are still fierce. Our family, like, even though we're able to go back. I mean, back then we didn't even have the option yet. But even if we did, we were still in fears. There were no set stone of law and order that will protect people and their land and their, safety. The safety was the biggest reason why majority or most of the people are still scared to go back because of that. So that's why we chose to come to the U.S. A lot of questions said why didn't we choose to go back? Because of the ethnic, like conflict, and there's just so much level, the rules and the constitutions and like the government and the ethnic leaders, and they're just very complicated. And as a normal people like us, and going back, if there's no resources, like how do we integrate into the the community and the city back there, like, and if there's no land, or if there's, then how will people get back on their feet, right? So the question is the question, and the rates of like some villages or some old village where there might be still bomb, and will it be safe to even cross and to walk on those areas, A question in terms of safety, and in terms of like, will they really let us just walk back and live in a normal life again, or will they, still manage to be do whatever they want and get whatever they want, like before, coming in people village, and take whatever they want, and do whatever they want to the ethnic group, and there's not much you can do because the military have more power and have more resources and have more guns and army, so there's no way that you can pick the fight that you might not be able to win. What's the point, right? So risk your life to go back versus maybe just stay somewhere else. So there was we have to wait whether was the option, was it safe for us, so there were more unsafety reasons and for us to not go back then. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for speaking to that, Paw. And as just briefly touched on earlier, repatriation is it's very, very complex, and often has to do with, there's sort of multiple layers to it, right? There's sort of the government layer to it, and the community layer to it, and then there's the individual choice. Yeah. And even when we, go ahead, Paw.
No, I say it would be great if like the government are taking that to welcome back the people and reconcile with the people who have gone through so much like experiences that they can't even imagine, and the hatred that people have experienced. Like how do you have the government be reconciled with the people, and how people can trust their government, especially with what's going on right now? It just there's a lot of question, and for safety reasons. So it's like you said, there are many layers into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and thank you also, Kristen mentioned the experience right now of Rohingya Muslims and just the human rights issue that's going on right now. So, absolutely, very, very complex issue. Now, I think Suhad is on the line. So I'm going to go ahead and try to transition to Suhad again. So Suhad, if you can press *1 to unmute yourself. And we would love to have you start off with your section. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting feedback that there's some more technical issues with Suhad being able to join us. So sorry to keep delaying that process. But Paw, I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple more questions to you. And one in particular that I think is just an important thing for us all to think about is there anything that you would want, so Apple Domingo asked if there's anything that the Burmese community would want a resettlement agency to know for new refugees that are resettling here in the United States. And Paw, I don't expect you to speak on behalf of all Burmese refugees, but it would be great to just hear a little bit about what advice would you give to a resettlement agency as they're working with newly arrived refugees?
Yeah, I think that, being open-minded and being trauma-informed, because, all these different type of ethnic groups, they have, even though they all come from Burma, but they all have experience, different experience. Like some people losing their family, some people losing home, some people being, family being persecuted, like in many different ways. So all these different refugees, and even though they're all different ethnic groups with, different religion background and different family background, they all have different trauma in a way that, we might not Oh, I'm sorry, my computer just let me log it back. So I think that it is very important to be open-minded and to be supportive, like, and be welcoming, as majority of, I think, like Resettlement already been, and learning to be not judgmental, even though sometimes I think, like, not judge it too, because the participants from that country, maybe all those stereotype or maybe the news might portray, but opening the ear and listening from the direct of, like, the participants, and also the need of that newly arrived, because every refugee have a different need. Therefore, be there for, especially when they're new to the country. I think it's very important to have that support. I know, like, majority, like a lot of the time, when you come to the new country, there's so many things that you have to adapt and adjust, in terms of, like, where to go, how to get there, and having not just only one time or two times, having maybe more support for either the participant or the family, like, in any way that the agency can do. I think can definitely be impactful, and be that they will feel that now that we have at least somebody is caring about us, it's not like not feeling unwanted, instead of feeling like, okay, there's somebody care for me, and now I'm here in a better home and a better place compared to hometown. So having a different like, so that they're not just coming here for no reason, or so giving hope that despite the struggle and where they come from, like having the hope, like things will get better. So I think that help, and every city is different. So, but I think learning about the individual and listening to their story, because having somebody to just be listening and having the opportunity to tell the story are very, I think the voice of the family are very important.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Paw. Those are really important reminders to all of us who either work with refugees or who interact with refugees or who just live in communities alongside refugees. It's so important to have that, to have your perspective on that, and especially the perspective of the importance of just getting to know refugees, whether they've been here for 6 days or 6 months or 6 years. It's so important for us to get to know our neighbors. And sort of to piggyback off of that last question, Kim also asked if you could talk a little bit more about what it was like when you first arrived in the U.S. So, like, were there any inadequacies of support, or how did you feel? Like, what was it like in those first days and weeks of arrival?
So when I arrived, like, earlier back in, maybe a decade ago, there were not a lot of refugees, like, in my neighborhood, or, like, especially, like, come from the same, like, Korean. There were not a lot of Korean people. So at the time, there were not a lot of much community, like you said. I think community is very important. So the community was not formed at the time yet. So it was more challenging to be integrated into the community and into the school, because, like, very simple, like not knowing the language, not knowing, like, how to get around in the community or how to get to places, and the connection, and not feeling connected to the community, or not feeling like this is my home yet, So I think those are very challenging, and for myself, it was the beginning, like, adjusting to school and the culture and how the system worked. But for my parents, it was more like, job, like, and their English, and getting used to how they run. So for definitely in the beginning, it was harder, just because there were not a lot of community that were formed yet. So those, I think anywhere you go, having a sense of community and be part of something, and having, somebody there to support you are a big contribute to success of a person. So I think at the beginning there was a challenge.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that must feel like to be in the stages of sort of trying to connect with the community and for everything to be so new.
And to add into that, like going to, like, as some of you might know, like how public school system and some students can be, high school or middle school, they all can have that like experience going through whether bullying or discriminations, or there are just so many little things that I did not aware back then. Then I realized, oh, okay, that's because of because of language barrier, because of people representative or culture, so so those were somewhat a challenge at the beginning, but it over time, I overcame through it.
Yeah, good, great. We're so glad to hear that, Paw. Now I think we have Suhad on the line.
Oh, wonderful!
No.
We're waiting for it.
Yay! Suhad, we're so glad you're here. So the webinar today is scheduled to be an hour and a half. So Suhad, I'm going to ask you to be a little brief. I hate to do that, but if you want to just go ahead and start and tell us about your experience, and we'll try to be sure to wrap up by 2:30 today. Okay?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Suhad, and I'm originally from Iraq, a refugee, and I came to Utah 2009. So I left my country, Iraq, 2006, and I was working with the USA there as interpreter and human resources. But because of the war in Iraq, and we tried to get like peace place, where I fled to Egypt 2006, and I stayed there till 2009, and I came here to Utah. So it's not easy to live in a country like full of war and full of killing and kidnapping. So I fled with my 2 kids to Egypt, and I stayed there till 2009. I applied with IOM. Is International Organization Migration, and this organization only people they were working like interpreters or with the U.S. companies, they can apply to them. And in Egypt, I tried to get for my children's school in the beginning, but it was hard for us because we were not residents. So after that we found they accepted us, and we started working on ourselves there, and also I started to find job for myself there because I need to pay my rent there and I need to survive there. So at last, after few months, there's a company, cosmetic company, accepted me to hire me because the manager at that time, he told me because his wife is from Iraq, that's why he accepted me to hire me. I was working there with the administration there, and through these 3 years, we were working on file our papers with the IOM. It's not easy to live even in Arabic country, but you don't have any residence. But through my school, my son's school, they gave us a residence, study. And when I applied to IOM, they asked me many questions about my background and where I'm working, and my supervisors in the USA already, they talked with IOM there, then they explained the situation in Iraq, and they told them we cannot keep her in Iraq because she was working interpreter and it's risky to stay there with her family. So they accepted me to go out, even from Egypt, to come to Utah. In the beginning, because I and my sister, she was in Jordan, we were together, working together to go out because she was working also interpreter. So she went before me like by 1 month to California, and when I talked with them, I told them I need to follow her in California. They told me, no, we assigned you to be in Utah. So in the beginning, they told me, they gave me also like a different name for Utah. They gave me like Utah. So I surprised, like, is there any state that name in the United States? When I came back, I talked with my sons, and one of them, he told me, Mom, is not Utah. I think they spelled like wrong, it's Utah. So I asked him, from where you know about this state? He told me from Western movies, because all Western movies, like, they are like the stories in Utah. I started searching about Utah and about the economic there and about work, and I tried hard to go even to talk with them again to join my sister. They told me, no, it's good for you because you have family, and we know you will not survive in California because California is expensive and is not safe for your children. We know Utah is good for you. So I came here to Utah through IRC, another agency, and even we came by ourselves, like nobody sponsored us here, and we didn't have any friends or any families. So I stayed like 1 month or months without stopping, and I was worried about my family there. I was walking like any coffee shop just to sit there and to connect with my family, to tell them I'm all right, I'm fine, don't worry about me. And also I started like working with the Qatar Community Services as a volunteer, helping them like with interpreting, helping the refugees here, and they offered for me a job like to be like case manager assistant at that time, 2010, and through my hard work with it, so now I'm housing coordinator, because after that I started working case managers and they promoted me to be like supervisor, and now I'm housing coordinator. My 2 sons now, after like since 2009 until now, so almost like now 7 years. So my 2 sons, one of them, he joined National Guard and he got his citizen. And the other one, he graduated this year from high school and they accepted him in one of the universities here. And I succeeded to get him like to bring some of my families here, and the Qatar Community Service, they sponsor them. 4 of my brothers here and my sister here, but most of my family outside of Iraq, like one of them in Canada, one of them in Sweden, and one of them in Holland, because we couldn't stay there because it's hard for us, it's not safe. So I think this is like briefly story of my life.
Yes, Suhad, that's so brief. I know there's so much more to share, but there's a couple questions I want to ask just to get at some of your experiences in your country of asylum. First, what was it that finally made you decide to leave Iraq?
And 2006 when I left Iraq, you mean?
Yeah, and what was it that caused you to leave?
Yeah,
I know you felt unsafe,
yeah,
but was there any specific thing that happened?
When I was working with the American companies there, we started like getting like some, for myself, I started getting like some threatening letters. I should leave this job. I shouldn't stay here. Even my neighbors, they started like looking at me in different way because I was working like interpreter and with the human resources with the U.S. aid, like American companies there. And even it was not safe that time. Even my sons, I felt like it's not safe to stay there because some of kids, they were kidnapping, like they were not stay alive there because explosions or bombs. But for my family, like for ourselves, because I know like I was working there and my brothers and my sister, like most of our like family, they were working with the American companies. So when I started getting these threatening letters, my father, he said, guys, you shouldn't stay here. I don't want to lose one of you. You should go out. So we started like set out to a country like close to Iraq. So my sister, they were my sister and one of my brothers were in Jordan. And for myself, with my boys and my father, and after that, one of my brothers went to Egypt. So we stayed there to finish our paperwork and went out.
Yeah, and Suhad, what did it feel like as a mother of two young boys leaving Iraq and going to Egypt? How did you feel in those weeks and months and years that you spent in Egypt?
You know, honestly, I know, like, I'm a single mother. Like, I have, like, with my two boys, and it's not easy to be by yourself with the two kids in a country you need to survive. And it looked like a journey for me when I remember everything. It's not easy, but I taught them how to survive. I taught them how to take care of themselves. Even when we came here, even in 2009, the youngest one, he was like in 5th grade. But also I taught them how to work, like even when they were kids. Because honestly, I told them we should take care of ourselves and our family because no one else would. So it's not easy. I know I got many experiences through my journey. So like now, almost like 7 years now out of my country, plus 3 years in Egypt. It means almost 10 years. But when I'm looking on my boys, one of them in National Guard, and one of them in university, I feel like I'm proud of them and proud of ourselves because even I succeed to get some of my family here to live in peace.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful to hear that was the outcome for you and for your family. And it sounds like you are so proud of your boys. Suhad, when you were in Egypt, were you legally able to work, and were your boys legally able to go to school?
This is what I told you in the beginning. Like, we spent like a few months just searching the schools to accept my kids, but everybody telling us, sorry, you are not resident, you are not resident, you are not resident. Except one school, they accepted us, and is from another country, Arabic country, is not Egyptian even school. And they accepted us, and they filed like my kids' papers, even with immigration, and we got like study residence, so we can stay there. And also about the job is not easy because even when you will work, because you are not resident, they will give you like the minimum wages. So only that company, they accepted me because, as I said, like the manager, he told me he was like working in Iraq and he had company there, and already his wife from Iraq, that's why he accepted me. So like, because you don't have legal papers, it's not easy to find job. Doesn't matter if you are in the same country like another Arabic country or no. And this is like, I know is frustrating, but this is the reality.
Yeah, absolutely, and that can make it a challenge to get by and to raise your family without being able to have an income.
Yes.
Suhad, did you feel like you were accepted as a refugee in Egypt?
When I was in Egypt, like, people, they are so nice and they are so social. Like, but we cannot be like refugee in Egypt. I think this is the rules there, or I don't know what's going on there. But the thing is, even for my family, we preferred all of us to go out, to come to the United States because we felt like we will be peace, and like we feel we will have good future even for our children. But in a refugee in another Arabic country, I didn't see like any refugee in Arabic country. Just most of them, they are in camps. I'm sorry to say like that.
Yeah, and Suhad, I also wanted to, I know I'd asked you to sort of rush just because it took a little while to get you online, but I did want to go back to some of the slides. And one in particular, just wondering what your access to medical care looked like while you were in Egypt.
So The medical care in Egypt, they have like private hospitals, and they have like local hospitals. So if you will go to the private hospitals, it will be more expensive because already we don't have any Medicaid or any medical cards or something like that. So if one of my children feels sick or something like that, I need to take him to the local hospital, and it will take like a while to get our like services there. But even if I will take one of my boys to the private, it will be also expensive. So almost we tried hard to keep, like, I tried hard to keep my boys like in a good health, even when they have a flu or have even cold. I was going to the pharmacy, and they are telling me, okay, so let us know what they have. So already the pharmacy prescribed for us some medicines for the cold or flu. But for the local like hospitals, we saw them like is not like good. And for private hospitals and clinics, they are very good, but they are expensive. So it's not easy like to get like medical care there, especially you don't have even Medicaid or even medical cards or something like that.
Okay, thanks, Suhad. And one more question specific to you, and then we'll go back to the chat box. But how did you feel safe while you were in Egypt? Did you feel safe as a woman and as a refugee, walking the streets or working or taking your kids to school? What were your feelings of safety?
You know, in Egypt, when I was in 2006 and 2007 and 2008, I think now the change of the government there and the change of the rules there now, because at that time we felt like we are okay. We felt like we are safe, like, but it's not like, let us say, 100%. You know what I mean? Even at night, when you are walking by yourself or taking a taxi to go to your home at night, we also is not safe. But let us say it's safe like 60-65%.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And as you mentioned, with the change of government, I think the sentiments of safety for refugees in some cities in Egypt has certainly changed.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pose a question to you that was also posed to Paw earlier. And what is it that you think that communities in the United States who are resettling refugees, how can they be more helpful to newly arriving refugees such as yourself, maybe somebody who's a single mother and coming as a refugee from Iraq? What are some things that resettlement agencies that could do to help people in your shoes who are newly arrived to the U.S.?
You know, through my experience here, like even when I applied like with IOM, and when I came here, I think even the orientation they are giving there in overseas is a little bit like missing information about United States here, because some of them they are coming from another state and each one has his own thoughts. And even here, it will be good if we have some education about the rules for each state and about the benefits for each state, because each state different benefits from the other one. So this is the situation when I struggled. I came here, I didn't know about the benefits very well. I didn't know about even the rules here very well, because when I got the information from the overseas orientation, it was like completely different. So that's why even some of them, when we are receiving here, they are asking many questions. The people they give orientation in overseas, they didn't tell them about this information. That's why some of them they have shock when they are coming here. So I think it will be beneficial, like if we can get more education for even single mothers about how she can work on herself and how she can get more education, how she can get her more even certification if she has more talent. It will be good.
Yeah,
so for
absolutely.
myself, I worked hard to discover these things.
And to add on that, especially with, single mom, I think there, more need if you, like in terms of like child care, especially if they come with, younger children. It's hard to, even though I'm not a single mom, but just seeing some, people be heavy, like seeing, there's a single mom who have to take care of the children and finding like childcare and at the same time working. So there's just a lot of, it's more challenge compared to whole family, coming with the mother, the dad, and then all the symbolists, So I think, and after time, like there's so many process like to apply for assistance, like the application is so long, so having somebody to assist with fill out those application and assist with them. Oh, you can apply for like daycare assistance and maybe after school programming or like additional resources, especially for a single mom, and helping with fill out those forms, because the form can be like very challenging, especially people who might not have basic education and able to read or write, So those can be very challenging and can be very frustrating, especially for a new mom or new single mom who come to, or single dad who come to the country, have a kid to take care of, and at the same time, working and pay for rent and other stuff. So I think having somebody, maybe a mentor or somebody can just assist, the family individually, that can be very impactful, to just have somebody there, be supportive of like you have questions and then you go ask, not just only going back to the agency, but having additional people to assist are always, I think, helpful to newly arrived families. So matching them with maybe a family mentor or somebody, community member, to just help with daily stuff and be a supportive, maybe friends or so those things can be very helpful.
Yeah, because it's not easy. Because even especially people, they don't, like the single mom or single dad, they don't know English. Like I'm lucky, I have my the English language, but some of them, they don't have that language. It's hard for them to access for these things, especially when they are trying to find job. They will already they are facing childcare and a long process and a long filing papers, and this is also like frustrating and even is not easy. So this is what I'm seeing even with a single dad or single mom, especially like supporting about like childcare.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard enough to resettle as a refugee with a family and many supports and learn the language and find a job, and then to do it as a single parent for yourself and for your children, that only creates more challenges. Pa, I wanted to ask, there was one question in the chat box that talked about how you felt your educational experience was in the camp, and did you feel like it was effective for preparing you for the education system in the U.S.?
Definitely not. I think, we at the beginning we didn't know that we were, going to come here after going to like all those levels, but it did help, like the, at least learning the basic versus not knowing anything, So I think having at least basic educations, just learning and understanding, what's going on and learning about the history, what's happening currently, or learning about just what's going on in the camp and learning like ABCD or a few sentences or a few vocabulary, in Korean or Burmese or Thai or in English. I think just the basic stuff did help, but not really prepare in terms of preparation. I do not believe, from my personal experience, it was not well prep. For us, I think, like I said earlier, the expectation and the reality, having somebody maybe prepare more adult educations, like boys, having adult education. I don't think my parents even get to go to school in the camp because there were not much opportunity for adult education back then. They have like orientation maybe before you will leave. Like literally, they just go through very fast, boom, boom, boom. You just okay, but and there's not much, and the information not retaining, and all of the time, it's not really, you're not learning about the reality where you go into that country and expecting what having somebody to maybe the reality of what to expect versus dreamy that you're going to get to live in a house and this and that. No, you're gonna go live there. You're gonna be on your feet after 3 months or after 6 months or yeah. So heavy a reality like of expectation of like you will be there, you have to work and this or that. Just heavy. I think more informative education, informative like what you can do while you're what you can do while you're waiting. So maybe during those time, then the parents can learn some basic stuff, to prepare them so that when they come here, they're not shot off at what all the things that they are supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask one final question that's in the chat box, and then we will go ahead and wrap up. But before I ask this question, I also just want to say for those, there's many, many questions in the chat box, and I tried to focus on the ones that were most directly related to Paw and Suhad, so we could hear from their experiences. And I know there were some general questions about resettlement and some other things that we just didn't get to, but we will certainly provide a recording of this webinar after the fact and can touch base offline for some of those burning questions. But I wanted to end with just this question from Gina that talks about your experiences in learning English and what it looks like to be more encouraging to refugees who are learning English. And I know, Suhad, you already had sort of a baseline of English when you came, but I can imagine, even just with that baseline, there were still some challenges with cultural aspects of the language. So if the two of you, if we could start with Paul, and if you could just speak for 1 minute about experience and challenges with English, and then we'll go to Suhan.
Oh, I go first?
Yeah,
yep.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So I think for me, when I came here, because of my age, I just have to go straight to high school, and I know, like I said, very basic, so I have to learn. I was placed in ESL classes, so I have to learn from beginning, learning how to read and write and communicate with people. So it was hard, not my first year was the most challenge because I was not able to voice or speak out, not just because I'm shy, because I'm worried that the peers might make fun of my accents or might make fun of because I did not speak, fully, or not able to put all the verb in the sentence, and just worry about peers, and also not able to participate much because of the language. So I think language can be very huge. Not able to express your opinion, or not able to speak out what you really want to say because of that language. So it was a challenge at the beginning of my freshman year, just going through the process, reading, writing, learning to communicate and speaking in front of the classroom, and speaking to teacher and expressing that what was going on. And I think very important for a teacher to just be aware of their student, especially with ESL students, of where they're coming from and what challenges they're going through, and not being too harsh or being very judgmental to because of their background or anything like that, and how to be more supportive. I think so I did the process at the beginning challenges, but I was motivated to learn and to not give up because I was the eldest, so I had to be a good role model and do whatever I can to help support my family, read the paper and helping my parents with whatever people they got from the government, or like helping out in the community. From then on, I just was able to improve my English and able to assist my parents and other members of the community.
Yeah, that's great. And Suhad, do you want to tell us a little bit about your language experience and how we can encourage other refugees to learn English?
Yeah, my experience, even with through my brothers when they came here, some of them, like 2 of them, they didn't know English very well. So we encourage them to learn like every day 5 words from the important words they need to communicate with people here. And I encourage them even to go to ESL. So they started to go to ESL, plus they were memorizing every day 5 words, English words, important ones. But the important thing we saw, like when they communicate with people through even jobs and work, we saw them like they have progress in the English. Even for me, when I came here, like my study, like English literature, like most of the like dialogue or accent is like English. But when I came here, even like when they're spelling like the water, when I'm saying water, there's no water. So the dialogue, like even for the American accent, is different. Mm-hmm. But one of my friends, she talked with my brother one day, and she told him, doesn't matter, you need to learn English. If you don't afraid, you should have courage to even pronounce and say 1 word at least, because doesn't matter if you will say it wrong, because all of us, we came here immigrants. Nobody from us know English very well when we came here. So she told him, all America, they are immigrants. So
yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't matter if you will say the sentence wrong, don't afraid, just open your mouth and just push that word and you will be fine. So that's what we started talking with our refugees when they are coming here. Don't afraid, even if you know some words, don't afraid, just talk, open your mouth, and we will understand. And we started like push them and encourage them to work, because through the communication with people, we saw them like they speak English. Like I have like single mother. She came like 5 years ago. I met her here to apply for her citizen, and she told me, remember me? I came here, I didn't know even 1 word. You see me now, I speak English very well.
Yeah, that's great. And there's so much empowerment that can come with that, and so much opportunity that can come with that. Though it is very difficult, but I think as both of you mentioned, not having the language can be somewhat isolating. And so, encouraging refugees to join ESL classes, and to find those supports and those mentors along the way is so important. So we have now gone over our time, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jackie to wrap us up.
Great. Thank you, everybody, so much, and for Paw and for Suhad for sharing your stories. We really appreciate it. I know all our participants do as well. So with that, I leave you with BRYCS contact information, our website, our email, our toll-free number, and then also our social media links. Please do follow us on Facebook and Twitter if you are able, and check out our blog. And if we didn't get to your question today, feel free to email us, and we will field that question to either Paw or Suhad or answer it on our end. When we close the screen here, you'll be redirected to a short survey, and then please keep a lookout in your email inbox in the next couple days, and you'll receive a follow-up email with the recording and PowerPoint slides. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.